Chairman Levitt,
Here.
Member Szynski,
Here.
Member Colvin. If you're online, can you please raise your hand and I can promote you to panelist? Okay. I promoted Member Colvin to panelist. Member Colvin?
Here.
Member Paul Johnson? Member O'Carroll?
Here.
Member Rackley?
Here.
Member Jacobin?
Here.
Member Marty Johnson?
Here.
Member Gamboa?
Here.
And Member Foley is absent. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Beginning, I'd like to recognize the service of Mr. Jim McIntosh, who's been on the committee for a number of years, and appreciate the service and the contribution to the committee that he's made. We have a new person representing the Department of Taxation. His first name is Matthew, and his last name, if I pronounce it, I'm going to do it wrong. So why don't you tell us your last name?
Stelmoshchek.
Welcome, anyway. Welcome. We're happy to have you on board. Next item on the agenda is public comment.
Persons wishing to provide public comment remotely may access the meeting by using the telephone numbers and meeting ID posted on the agenda. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per person, and comments based on viewpoint will not be restricted. Public comment will be available at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the agenda. At the discretion of the chairperson, additional public comment may be heard when that item is reached. The chairperson may allow additional time to be given to a speaker as time allows at his sole discretion per NRS 241.020, NRS 241.030. Is anyone in Reno wanting to make public comment today? If you are on Zoom, please raise your hand. And if you're on the telephone, please dial *9 to be put into the queue. We have 2 members, and we'll start with the phone number ending in 577. I'm asking them to unmute. Okay, we'll start with the phone number ending in 008 first. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Aaron Katz. I'm a resident of Incline Village. I'm talking about Incline Village. As the committee knows, I'm a critic. I've submitted written comments. I hope the committee members have read them. Pardon me? Do you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, I apologize. Notwithstanding it is on fiscal watch, where are the financial statements? Intentionally, they haven't been provided, so I provided them. And what do we see? More deceit intended to mislead the committee as well as the public. Look at the general fund, over $4 million of overspending, and instead of calling them what it really is, they're labeled generic transfers. They're really alleged central services cost allocations. Look at the Community Services Fund. More overspending hidden by transfers. More operational revenue evidenced by facility fees, which are really non-operational revenues because they're the product of non-exchange transactions. Look at the Beach Fund. Same misleading reporting. Look at the Internal Services Fund, failure to include central services cost allocations, which if included would show more overspending. Notwithstanding, NRS 354-612 requires allocation to all functions of government, not just the cherry-picked ones IVGID wants to provide. The financials are a house of cards. They rely on the facility fees and central service cost subsidies. I put the committee on notice of the failure to adopt a central services cost allocation plan per this committee's own regulations, making all of these transfers criminal. And what does the committee do? Nothing. And who suffers? We local parcel owners in Incline Village. What exactly is this committee here for, if not to protect the public? I've asked before, I'll ask again, hold hearings for severe financial emergency and notify Washoe County Board of Commissioners that this district is unable to manage its affairs in accordance with the NRS and have them conduct some hearings. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we'll go to phone number ending in 577. Please unmute. All right, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Clifford Dobler. I have been a resident of Incline Village for 32 years. I am a CPA and have been a member of the IVGID Audit Committee between 2020 and 2022. During my time on the committee, several items were reviewed, the largest being a serious lack of internal controls and the need for 4 years of prior period adjustments. I provided over 30 memorandums dealing with improper accounting, which were reviewed by Moss Adams, a regional CPA firm, with emphasis on 4 of the most criticals. Corrections were made on some, but the past management decided to discard many other changes and effectively buried them. Subsequently, 2 members of the audit committee decided to review the memorandums and obtain a report, which was never done or discussed with the entire committee. Both men quit the committee. Current members promised action, but nothing has been done. So where are we with outstanding problems? After making $7.5 million in prior period adjustments between 2019 and 2022, which expressed an improper capitalization of assets, there is a potential for another $10.7 million in charge-offs which have not been addressed. Add switching the enterprise funds to governmental funds and then reversing back, destroying any consistency. Add changing the Parks Department activities from the Community Service Fund to the General Fund in 2024, and then deciding to reverse the changes beginning in 2026. The reversal was listed in 2025 as a 24 as a prior period adjustment, but there was no prior period to adjust. They hit $1.5 million in losses. Add the error in the 2024 CAFR for prepaid expenses of $1.5 million, recorded improperly in the general fund, but were expenses of the enterprise funds. The 2026 budget indicates central service cost allocations from the 3 internal services fund to the general fund have been treated as a transfer rather than an operating expense, contrary to history and with no logic. IVGID claims instructions came from the Department of Taxation. I believe that is not true. I do understand that the committee relies on audits, but consideration should be given on an extensive review. Over the past 5 years, there has been 7 financial officers engaged without any proper internal controls and 3 auditors. The reporting is highly suspect. We need your help. Reinstatement is the only option. Thank you very much for your time.
That is all the public comment we have.
Colin? Thank you. Into the agenda now, I would like to take item number 4, out of order. Because what we discussed on item number 4 can have an effect on one of the items on number 3. So we'll take item number 4 out of order. Kelly, you might want to make some comments. And I may just mention that at our last meeting, I had mentioned that we might want to consider having a cutoff date on which no extensions will be granted. In other words, I'm not certain what that right date would be, but say for instance, if you were going to submit the audit report after the date for filing of the final budget, here you are filing a final budget, say for in this particular instance for the 2026 year, and you do not have the complete closeout of the 2024 year. It just seems like to me that does not make sense that we would grant an extension that goes beyond that. Now, maybe even the final budget's too late. Maybe it should be the tentative budget. When they do a tentative budget, you should have an audit report in. Anyway, that's one of the things I think we need to consider. And Kelly's got a couple of other additional items, and I'd like to hear the feelings of the committee members as to what you think we should do with this.
Thank you, Chairman and members. The Department of Local Government Finance has seen an increase in the number of audit extension requests from the local governments. And we are looking at some guidance as to handle this level of increase. Do we continue to approve 30-day requests if requested timely, or state we will only provide one extension after which the entity will be in violation to be addressed in a corrective action in accordance with NRS? In 2024, last year, the department received 65 first-time extension requests. That was for their first month, and the department provided a 30 to 45-day extension request. We subsequently received 37 second extension requests where the local governments were asking for an additional 30 to 45 days. And then we received 30 third extension requests, putting them out 3 months after the due date. For 2025, because of AICPA and some other concerns, the department has received 110 or 114 first extension requests. That's almost double what we saw last year, which last year was extremely high number of extensions. I do know that 10 out of the 17 school districts had also requested extension requests due to the AICPA single audit delays, which was due to the federal government shutdown. We allowed this year for one-time 45-day extensions, allowing them to reduce the period of time from the entity's delivery of the audit to their audit board or their board of directors to their time they delivered the audit to the Department of Taxation, ultimately providing for a 30-day extension. And we are coming to the Committee on Local Government Finance looking for some guidance on this. You know, do we continue to do extensions again, second, third time, you know, asking for further extensions, or do we not do extension authorizations and have that be an item that is covered on their audits as a compliance item, and therefore corrective action is required? Thank you.
So members of the committee, I think we've got a couple of items here we need to consider. One is, as Kelly just mentioned, do we have multiple extension requests? Say, for instance, if someone comes and wants an extension request for 4 months as opposed to the 1 month, which has been our more normal situation. And then, as I mentioned previously, is there a time when we should not grant them period because they've gone beyond that period of time and there's no excuse that would justify granting that? So, members of the committee, I'd like to hear your comments and what your feelings are on that, Tom.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Tom Szynski. On the front end, it certainly makes sense that, and I think Ms. Langley presented correctly, that there are circumstances on the front end, could be a government shutdown, could be circumstances within the audit that required the auditor to do additional testing, something to that effect, that on the 30-day front end, the initial extension, those generally makes sense. The subsequent ones, I think, are more problematic. And I think, Mr. Chairman, you pointed out, if we go beyond the tentative budget, then how do you file a budget that you don't have complete numbers on? So I'd be a little concerned going beyond the tentative budget to echo your thoughts on that.
Other members of the committee?
Chairman Levitt, this is Felicia O'Carroll. I'm sorry I don't have much of a voice today, but I think situations like this year with the AICPA actually saying if you have a single audit, you are not allowed to issue it before the issues are resolved regarding the compliance supplement. I think those are unique and those have to be dealt with when they occur and rarely. But I also think that just because that was now approved, the auditors are not going to be able to turn around in a week or two all of those audits that were put on hold. So I attended a seminar last week and they made it very clear that, yes, we'd like to be able to get those out next week or the following week, but there is such a backlog that that's not going to happen this year. So I think we have to be, granted, I'm speaking from the auditor standpoint, but it's not, that I think can't be remedied with just we're not going to grant the extension, because that's a timing constraint on the auditors who do a lot of these. And there are very few auditors who do governmental audits anymore. So I think we need to be careful not to isolate them and say, put unreasonable requests on them.
I think based on what you're just saying, that whatever we decide we do, we probably ought to have an exception in there for when we have a governmental body or the AICPA or someone similar statute that makes it because of them not acting on a certain.
I would agree with you, Chairman Levitt. And I think for those who just continually ask for 30-day extensions and then another 30-day extension and another 30-day extension, I think that needs to be curtailed at some point, and maybe it has to be on an individual, isolated instance basis. But you're right, once you get too far out, then even the budget doesn't make sense or can't be tied back to what you've already done. So I completely agree with that. Thank you.
Other members of the committee?
This is Jessica Colvin. I do agree that beyond the tentative budget filing would be too long, but I wanted to point out that the complexity of the government financial statements and in complying with the standards has really increased significantly. Since the time I audited governments, the number of GASBs out there, standards to comply with, has over doubled. And for larger governments, I'll disclose, Clark County is one of those that has been unable to meet the initial deadline. You have a complex government that has several other government entities that have the same deadline. And so they're meeting theirs and submitting their financial statements to Clark County, but then it takes the government compiling all of those statements much longer. And then you're getting into the holidays and some audit firms are closed the last 2 weeks of the year. And so then you're asking for another extension. So I know it's very frustrating for Department of Taxation. But we have been it's been unavoidable for several years now for Clark County. And I don't know if there's other larger governments that experience the same thing. Also, I was curious if the state submits their financial statements or their audits to Department of Taxation. I know the state isn't under this body, but it's our understanding that they're very far behind in completing their audits.
Washoe County is in the same situation. We are unable to complete our audit and all of the quality control checks by November 30 every year. So we always are required to ask for an extension, which we don't like to do, but we're in the same situation as Clark County.
For the record, this is Kelly Langley. Jessica, you had requested information regarding the state. Department of Taxation does not receive a copy of the state audit, but it is my understanding, I have heard that they are also running, behind their regular deadlines for similar reasons.
Anyone else have any comment?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I guess not so much a comment as a question, and I think this goes back to something that Jessica just said. It seems like we've had these deadlines in place for audits for a long, long time. And at the point in time that they were put in, we were probably on GASB 8 or 9. I'm wondering if part of this solution is perhaps revisiting those statutory deadlines for the audits to make them more realistic with what some of these governments have going on and the amount of things that need to be audited.
I've thought of that also. Of course, that requires legislative action, which we're not able to really do here. But anyway, that's a thought.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is Paul. I was finally able to log in. A couple of other issues. There's a real staffing issue with respect to qualified professionals in what we do, so that when local governments have turnover in key positions, sometimes it's tough to fill and puts the local government at risk of meeting the compliance on these deadlines. I don't think 30 days is enough, and it sets the stage for people to have to request 30-day extensions for several months. I think it would be better for the local government if we established a maximum number of months, for example, that they had to get that within. That way it would reduce some of the paperwork that Kelly and team would have to process for consecutive 30-day extensions. They would have to provide a compelling reason as to why it would be, X number of months. That might help, but that also would require a legislative change.
Any other comments?
For the record, again, Kelly Langley. Paul, when you're, I agree with everything you're saying. And we do have entities that have requested possibly a 60-day extension. Very few requests beyond that, but that 60-day, if they provide us a 60-day request, it has been our policy to just say, we'll give you a 30-day extension and then come back and we can revisit your request again if you need another 30-day. But are you proposing then that maybe if they give us a 60-day, we'd approve it, that eliminates, duplicate approvals of the extension, but then still ensuring that maybe we can receive that audit prior to the tentative budget? My concern is that if we don't receive it before the tentative budget, it makes it difficult to review that tentative budget that then is filed for their public comment for their public and constituents, because if you don't have the beginning balance, it's hard to know how you go forward with that. So I would still like to see the audits be filed timely before that tentative budget gets filed.
Any other comments? Well, what if we had a situation where we would approve the department issuing extensions up to 60 days, but they would not extend beyond the filing of the tentative budget? Does that seem to solve most of your problems? That does. Let's have a motion on that then, and second, we can approve that.
For the record, Mr. Chairman, Tom Szynski, I move that we grant 60-day extensions, but no extensions beyond the tentative budget.
We've got a motion and a second. Any comments on the motion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? It was passed.
Thank you. The next item 3A, For possible action, financial condition reports by the department and local government entities, consideration of possible adoption and recommendations and orders. We have Incline Village General Improvement District, department update on monthly reports requested due to fiscal watch status pursuant to NRS 354.685. Attending today is staff member Kelly Graman, budget analyst 2 for the department. She will speak first. Attending from Incline Village, we have Mick Homan, trustee, Robert Harrison, general manager, and I believe online we have Noemi Barter, finance director. Thank you. Kelly, if you'd like to. Thank you.
Okay. For the record, my name is Kelly Graman, budget analyst assigned to Incline Village GID. In the packet, there should be the fourth quarter QES, the IVGID bank reconciliations from August to October, and the extension letter request. We continue to have meetings with IVGID, and IVGID completed their FY24 audit in June of 2025. And as you can see in the extension request, they're requesting a 4-month extension. They could not secure an auditor until the previous audit was finalized. And at that time, most audit firms' schedules were full and could not take on another client. The auditors have scheduled for late January for the audit field work, and it usually takes 6 to 8 weeks from the final field work to final issuance, resulting in a late March, early April timeline. This extension has not been approved, and we will be, already did that, discussed that earlier, sorry. In item 4.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening or good morning, committee members. Thank you for being here again today to give you an update. With me is Trustee Mick Homan, who is our treasurer. Noemi Barter's on the phone. Unfortunately, we lost our auditor. She was with us until 9:30, and then she had another commitment with the client because we wanted to make her available for the committee to be able to ask questions, but we'll have to do that next time. We did submit a request, an extension request to April 29th. As you know, as Kelly explained, the problem we ran into was being able to hire an auditor with the fact that we didn't have an audit from the previous year. And so once that was secured and we were able to do that, we were able to bring them on board. And then the schedule that we have from them is essentially the end of April. So kind of what I heard is we got a 60-day extension and an April 15th deadline because we had requested April 29th, unless there's going to be something different from that. But we'll continue to work with that. After Trustee Homan has some comments, we certainly have our finance director, Noemi Barter, who's available to answer questions as she's continuing to prepare the schedules for our audit so that we can meet those deadlines.
Thanks, Bob. For the record, Mick Homan, I'm an IVGID trustee. I'm the treasurer. I'm also the vice chair of the audit committee. First, thanks again for the opportunity to speak in front of you. And I want to just take a couple minutes to provide a trustee's perspective on the progress we continue to make. When I spoke to you in September, I provided a summary of the major accomplishments that staff had made in the preceding months. And among other things that I mentioned, the completion of the 24 audit, the completion of a quality and timely 26 budget, the elimination of the backlog of the bank and other reconciliations, the development of a monthly financial reporting package that meets both the CLGFs and the IVGID board oversight needs, the rebuilding and upgrading of our finance and accounting leadership team, and the engagement of a new audit firm to perform our fiscal 25 audit, and the re-engagement of our audit committee. But I also acknowledged at that time that we weren't yet where we wanted to be or where we need to be from a financial reporting controls perspective, and that we still have work to do. I specifically talked about needing to fully onboard a new finance and accounting leadership team. That is now done. I mentioned the need to fill a number of positions further down the organization chart, and I'm happy to report that as of the end of that last week, all those positions have been filled with onboarding to be completed by the end of January. I talked about the need to ensure new financial reporting processes and reporting packages are sustainable. We're now 3 months into our monthly reporting process. We engaged a consultant to help us finalize and customize our reports. And while we still have cleanup to do, staff has made dramatic progress in cleaning up the underlying records. We're continuing to make progress implementing the remaining modules of our ERP system that we implemented not too long ago. We still have lots of work to do here, but staff has an implementation schedule laying out training and project go live dates for the balance of fiscal 26 and into 27. I mentioned the need to fully address our identified control outages. The audit committee is overseeing that process. We're still in the early stages, but progress is being made. And staff's developed status reporting that's being reviewed by the audit committee at each of the meetings. And finally, I mentioned the work that we need to do in the coming months to prepare for the fiscal 25 audit. Noemi will cover that progress and status effort in some comments that she'll make in a bit. Net, we still have a ways to go, but the staff and the audit committee and the board are aligned on our accounting controls and compliance priorities. And we continue to make substantial and measurable progress against those priorities. So from a trustee perspective, all this gives me confidence that we'll ultimately be in a position to fully comply with both internal and external regulatory reporting requirements. And if you'd indulge me, I'd like to just respond to some of the public comments that you heard. We hear a lot of the same things at our trustee meetings. And just a couple in particular, but it gives you a feel for it. There was mention of our facility fee being improperly reported as operating versus non-operating revenue. That's just flat out wrong. GASB provides for 3 different types of revenue: operating, exchange, non-exchange, and exchange-like. Our facility fee are clearly exchange-like. GASB acknowledges that there's a diversity in practice in how you account for those, and you can account for those as either operating or non-operating, provided you disclose how, which we do. There was talk about our central service cost allocation not being pursuant to a plan. Again, we have an authorized plan. It may not have the information that the individual wanted to see in it, but it does comply with regulations, and we've worked that with Kelly and Kelly. There was talk about the 30 memorandums. And while I give that individual credit for helping us to identify some fixed assets that need to be written off via prior period adjustments, I was one of the audit committee members that worked through those 30 memos. We got through about 21 of them before all of our prior finance leadership left. And so that had to be backburnered. It has since been resurrected. Just for background, I had a 40-year career as both a practicing public accountant and as a controller. I retired as a chief accounting officer for the largest consumer products company in the world. So I know a little bit about financial reporting. The other person that was working on that project with me was a senior partner for one of the big 4 accounting firms. The 21 that we had gotten through, there was no there. The remaining 9, there was a few items that staff had to follow up on. I have since had discussions with our finance staff, and they're working towards bringing that project back to the audit committee in our January meeting, where we will close that out. But the $10 million number that was talked about is pure fiction. It was primarily based on a bad set of instructions that the individual should look at all of our past capitalization policies compared to some recommendations that were made by Moss Adams, a number of which were not even adopted because they didn't need to be. There was talk about our internal service, our shared service costs being treated improperly as transfers. I think these people are getting our monthly board package reporting confused with what we're required to do in our ACFR. our monthly board reporting was engineered largely with the input from the board and from Kelly and Kelly to line up with our budgeting. And we've got certain classifications in there that we do for that reporting, which is not the same as we do for our ACFR, where those are clearly treated as operating expenses. So again, I just wanted to provide you perspective on that. And I think that's all I really had to say. Happy to take any questions after. I think Noemi wants to speak. Noemi.
Hi.
Noemi,
Yes,
could you
good
give an
morning.
update on the audit? Thank you.
Hi, good morning. Noemi Barter, Finance Director with IFGID. Good morning, Chair and Committee. An update for the audit. So I was onboarded with IFGID in August. Our controller was onboarded in September, and we have filled one accountant position just 2 weeks ago. So as we are filling these positions, we are able to slowly reconcile fiscal 26, fiscal 25. We're making great progress, but we are waiting to fill one more position by the end of January. We have completed and uploaded specific schedules and process documentation to the auditor's portal. Some of those include debt, cash, prepaid, payroll. So we have done a good chunk of what the auditors need. Of course, I cannot control the auditor's side and what they have tapped into already. But on our side, we are doing our part, and the remaining fiscal 25 items we will accomplish by the end of January so that we can get them a final trial balance by January 5th. And let me know if you have questions about that process. We've discussed in the last meeting, and we've discussed it multiple times about our timeline being late January and then 6 to 8 weeks out for reporting. And based on the discussion this morning, if we need to resubmit our request to show a March 30th board approval for that financial statement, we can speak with our auditor and hopefully make that deadline.
I think it's clear based on what the committee just did that the request you made for a 4-month approval is not going to be approved, and that 2 months is the maximum that you can ask for, and we expect it to be completed prior to the filing of a tentative budget. Now, having said that, and I'm happy to hear that you're making some progress on the problems that you've had, and that we would like, I anticipate that we're going to meet again the end of February, 1st of March. And at that point in time, we would like to have a report as it relates to what you've done with the internal control deficiencies. We would like a report on where you stand. Hopefully you'll have the financial report will be nearly done, but I hear a report from you and the auditors about where you stand on the financial report. I would like to also have your best information at that point as to what you see as coming as we addressed as violations of statute in the audit report, as well as what you anticipate you will see as far as internal control deficiencies that will be noted in the audit report. And of course, then the main thing we want is that when next year rolls around at the same time, we will not be having this discussion again.
We hope so as well.
Chair, if I could just make one comment. As you know, internal controls are as of a date. And as of the end of fiscal 25, much of the work that we've been doing to improve our internal controls will not yet have been implemented simply because the people weren't there.
I understand that.
So we will expect to see a lot of the same internal control deficiencies in the 25 audit, but that will be as of And for the year ended June 30, 2025, it will not yet take into account a lot of the improvements that we're making since that day. So I just want to make sure you understand that. Okay.
But I would like a report on where you stand at that current moment in addressing what these, these internal control deficiencies have been been noted for some time now. This is not a new thing that's all of a sudden appears on the scene. And so the report I would like to see at the end of February, 1st of March, is where do you stand at that current moment in addressing those internal control deficiencies? That make
Yeah,
We can do that.
as I mentioned, the staff will be preparing status reports for the audit committee. So we will very easily be able to take that most recent audit committee status report and present it to the committee.
Also, as I mentioned previously, I would like to get a feel for it then as to what you've done so that this situation is not going to happen next fall.
And just to, yes, and just to comment on that, we've already talked with our auditor to give her kind of a heads up of how can we schedule our audit early. So we've been tentatively put on their schedule for early September for our audit so that we can meet that 11:30 deadline.
Okay.
If I might ask a question, this is Felicia O'Carroll. Ms. Barter, I noticed that Baker Tilly had helped with some of the bank reconciliations, but who is it that you have secured for your auditor?
CLA.
CLA, I'm sorry, is that what you said? Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Clifton Larson Allen.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. It may be in here, but I kept looking for it and couldn't find it, so thank you.
Do we have any other comments by members of the committee? Tom?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to comment. I've seen growth here in the last few months. And so I think that's great progress. You're not home yet, home free. As Chairman said, we want to be sitting here this time next year, not having these conversations. So you got work to do to get there. So pleased about that. There's angst that exists up at Incline Village, for lack of a better choice of words. And, we appreciate the comments that we get, but certain parts of angst that we can't as a committee fix, only you folks in the community can fix that. And I know it's a challenge, but hopefully you're doing what you can within your community to try and address the difficulties that exist with community members that have differing opinions. And again, I know that's a challenge, but I think we've said in past meetings that we can't fix some of that stuff. We can only rely on, filed budgets, completed audit reports, and dealing with those types of issues. But you folks got to work on the community issues that exist. That's not in our wheelhouse. So those are my comments, Mr. Chairman.
And like comment, I've been on this committee now more than 50 years. And it seems like to me Incline Village has been a problem one kind or another over most of those 50 years. And obviously you well know there's at least two groups up there that have very different opinions as to what should be going on. And I recognize that.
And if I might we're focused on doing the right thing. Period. End of story. Okay. And I will, doing the right thing, regardless of what we do, we may not satisfy some of the people in Incline. And it's just the way it is. We're going to focus on doing the right thing for IVGID, for our residents, for the state and others. Period. End of story. And we will do what we can to assuage folks, but we can't control how people interact.
Thank you.
The things I talked about that I would like to have in February, March, I would like those written down so that we can review them and the department can review them and they're available. Do we have any other comments or questions from members of the committee? Okay, thank you very much.
Next item, item 3B, Douglas County School District, concerns regarding the general fund negative ending fund balance to be reflected in the 2025 audit. Chairman and members, in your packet, you'll see the FY25 audit for Douglas County School District reflecting the general fund negative ending fund balance of a negative $948,912 and special education fund reflecting a negative $476,339 balance. Those are shown on page 71 of your packet. Much of this is due to the ongoing decline in school enrollment, and although enrollment has been in years of decline, they did not meet the hold harmless criteria of 5% from prior year in accordance with NRS 386. Yet the decline in school enrollment was 4.75. Additional over expenditures are shown on page 65 of the packet. And in your packet on page 9, you can see the corrective action as received by the department. That information was just received this week, so it is hot off the press in your packets. Today we have Superintendent Frankie Alvarado and CFO Susan Estes from Douglas County School District, along with Megan Peterson, Deputy Superintendent Administration, and Melissa Willis, State Fund Manager, Director of Pupil Funding, to discuss the 2024-2025 audit, the proposed corrective action, along with the time frame of putting balances back into the positive. Thank you. Thank you for attending in advance.
Mr. Chairman. Hey, for the record, Marty Johnson, I just, before this item starts, want to disclose that Douglas County School District is one of our clients. Our involvement with them is limited to the capital side of the equation, which, as any of the school district people know, is outside of the general fund and operational issues. So I just wanted that disclosure in place. I intend to participate in the discussion unless it heads to a situation where we are going to talk about bonding or something like that. So thank you.
Thank you, Marty.
Mr. Chairman, this is Paul Johnson. I just wanted to, I don't know if there's a conflict, but I just wanted to disclose out of an abundance of caution that I have been working with the Douglas County School District on a volunteer basis to help quantify things and work with Superintendent Alvarado after he had reached out to me. So no formal agreement is reached, and it's all been on a completely volunteer basis on my behalf.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Tom Szynski. I just wanted to disclose as well that I've had some conversations with Superintendent Alvarado regarding their situation, but I'm in no contractual situation with them.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Superintendent Alvarado for the record. Good morning, everybody. Before I get started, I do want to thank Paul Johnson for his support in reviewing financials with me. I want to thank Sue Estes as well for her hard work with the budget for the school district, and Deputy Superintendent Megan Peterson as well as Melissa Willis have been a support for us as well. So as we get started today, I want to just rewind the record back to July 2024 when I entered Douglas County School District. At that time, the district had healthy ending fund balances of $10 million or more. As we progressed through the school year, we had our financial audit. At the conclusion of that audit, I met with Dave Silva, our auditor, and there were definitely some red flags and indicators of risk and indicators of potential fiscal insolvency. At that time, we recognized that expenditures were outpacing our revenue, and our revenue has truly been stalled. This year, we're finally reaching revenue levels that we received back in fiscal year 2022. Which is concerning for the district. So as I met with Mr. Silva, I identified other areas in which were an impact to our budget. You know, declining enrollment was mentioned. We missed the hold harmless provision by 0.25%, which would have brought in, you know, over $1 million of revenue back into the district for us to utilize. From fiscal year 24 to 25, there were 29 positions added in Douglas County School District, you know, and really the deficiency was within our internal control process. You know, we weren't managing positions between human resources and business, and there was no reconciliation process So we quickly worked with our leaders, identified this as an issue, and then we started working on identifying positions that we can reduce. We performed a salary schedule matrix in which we identified 41 certified teachers that may be eligible for retirement in 3 to 5 years. And so that told me maybe I can do a phased reduction process and eliminate positions through attrition to maintain the integrity of our instructional program. And that process has actually been fruitful for Douglas County School District. We saw some really good gains in academic achievement and moved from being ranked 7th in the state of Nevada to being ranked 4th in the state of Nevada. You know, so I just want to point that out, that sometimes spending a little bit more money is worth it in the end for kids, because at the end of the day, we're all about educating kids. That is our purpose. And so as we went through that, we ultimately reduced 47 positions coming into this school year. And we really paid attention to the internal control processes that we need. As we went through this audit, you know, what we've learned is that we had the negative ending fund balances in both general fund and special education. And we curtailed our spending as much as we possibly can, and also honored the contractual obligations that we currently have with our staff. We have very little flexibility in reducing certified employees during the course of a school year. You know, we have contracts that we have to honor. However, on the classified side of the house, we do have some flexibility due to lack of funds to reduce there. And we have done that. You know, Douglas County School District, as you all know, has experienced turnover in the superintendent position, turnover in many cabinet level positions. And I would say that is the reason why those internal control deficiencies exist. And so we're doing our best to revive those. As I reviewed the analysis of the general fund in the last 7 fiscal years, we've had a negative net change in our ending fund balance. So really there's been 2 years in which we built up our ending fund balance. And then there was some collective bargaining that had taken place in which we provided all employees with an 11% increase in fiscal year 23, and then a 4% increase in fiscal year 2025. However, there was no reduction in positions or staffing ratios according to our staff allocation matrix. And that just compounded the problem for us. So we've been working diligently, making sure our board is educated, making sure the public understands that our board has authority over our finances, and they have ultimate decision ability for the school district. I don't know how far you want me to go into the corrective action plan. I don't want to read information that you've already read. My goal is to, you know, honor your time and honor our time. But really, you know, I wanted to set the table for some of the reasons on why we are in this position. We did identify other areas of our budget in which it's encroaching into the general fund. You know, transportation. We've had to make $1 million transfer from our general fund into transportation. Special education, we've been forced to pull $1.6 million and transfer that from general fund over into the special education fund to make sure that we can maintain services. Special education is the one area where we're actually increasing enrollment. And we finally saw a slight dip this school year by just over 30 students in that area. And we received many students last school year that are on an IEP from either out of state or out of the area that require extensive services. And we're legally obligated to provide those services to children. And we cannot get in a position where we don't provide services, or else we're going to have an increase in state complaints and lawsuits against the district. One other area of liability that increased is our legal liabilities. You know, the district was engaged in many lawsuits, and in fiscal year 24, our legal expenses surpassed $800,000. Last year, our legal expenses were near $400,000. You know, on the budget that we have, that's a huge amount of money that impacts the way that we do business and impacts the way that we can serve kids within Douglas County School District. What we've also noticed is that there are revenues are not keeping pace with our expenditures. So we're going to do a deep dive into those expenditures and make sure that we are reducing where we can reduce. And we've, through the analysis in this year's audit, we've done a projection of our ending fund balance for fiscal year 26. Initial analysis showed approximately a negative 5.2 ending fund balance. Since we've been reducing since July 1, that negative ending fund balance is down to about negative $4.6 million for this year. So we're on the right track. I believe we just need a little bit more time to work at this, to right size our staffing. And our board is going to be tasked with making very difficult decisions that are politically charged within our community. And those decisions are whether we consolidate schools or not. To capture negative 4.6 million, to try to recapture that, it's going to involve a reorganization of the district. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like right now, but we are working tenaciously to do the analysis, provide information to our board, and we're hoping to make a decision in early February on how we will reorganize the district. With that being said, to recover negative 4.6 million, like I said, we're going to need time. I think this is going to be a 2-year effort for us. And then after that, it's going to be about restoring our ending fund balance and our contingency fund. So we have a lot of work ahead.
And we know you had a deficit fund balance at the end of the last fiscal year reported in the audit, right? Now, if we were to take a look at your books right at this very current moment, how does the size of that deficit compare to what it did on June 30th? What it was on June 30th? Are we making progress eliminating that to date, or is all of this in the future?
No, we're making progress. So we had projected negative 5.2 ending fund balance for fiscal year 26. We're down to about negative 4.6 million. And we're continuing the reduction at the current moment as of today. And we'll continue to make reductions, but also we have contractual obligations that we have to honor. And once again, I want to maintain the integrity of our instructional system, not pull the rug from underneath our educators and our students and our families. That's really important that we continue to move forward, increasing our student achievement for us. But we'll work at it.
It appears, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it appears that you entered into contracts and you approved salary increases when you did not have sufficient revenues to support those. Is that correct?
That's one of the factors. I would say declining enrollment is the number one factor, in the loss of enrollment. If we were to put that into actual revenue, it would exceed $5 million in revenue the district has missed out on because of declining enrollment.
If you had declining enrollment prior to this fiscal year?
We've had declining enrollment for decades.
So in other words, you did not make a correct estimate as to what the declining enrollment would be for this fiscal year when you approved those contracts and salary increases. Is that correct?
No, that's incorrect. We made adjustments for this fiscal year. We reduced 47 positions. I was not in the district when the collective bargaining agreements were agreed upon.
Yeah, I'm talking about.
Yeah. And I believe there was no multi-year projection. Nevada doesn't require a multi-year projection, but that is an internal control process in which we were deficient in. And looking at, the money that was provided to us as a district, from the Senate bill, and then forecasting based upon budget assumptions, right? So we didn't have appropriate budget assumptions as we went into that collective bargaining process, and then came up with an agreed upon percentage of increase. And then that increase was then provided to all employees through a Me Too provision that's within their contracts.
I know it's pretty common for when the local government of any kind enters into contracts with their employees or the salary increases, part of those contracts, that they have the revenue, they've properly estimated the revenue to cover that. Evidently you you thought you were estimating properly, but you did not receive the enrollment that you anticipated. And so because of a declining revenue situation, you end up with a deficit fund balance, which of course is illegal.
Sue Estes, Director of Business Services. At the time that they entered into the contract of giving in 11%, it was devised to actually make our salary schedule more competitive with the other outlying school districts. What we did not anticipate was the reduction of the enrollment, because there was enough in our ending fund balance to pay both the 11% and the 4%, but the revenue that we have missed out on over the last 2 years has been drastic. So,
one thing,
I
you've
just-
had a declining fund balance for several years also, right?
Our ending fund balance was actually, once again, when I interviewed for the position, the first thing I researched was our budget. In those 2 years, we had ending fund balances of 10 million or more. So we had built up our ending fund balance for 2 years. But we did have a negative net change in our ending fund balance in 5 of the last 7 years.
That's what I was talking about. You know, when you have a declining fund balance and you then enter into contracts or for salary increases, you've got a built-in problem. Now let the one thing. First of all, it looks like to me we've got 2 problems here. One is you've got to get rid of this deficit fund balance. You know, that's imperative. Whatever you have to do, you need to get rid of that. Because if you don't, the time's going to come when you simply do not have enough cash. Or you end up having cash on your books, but it should belong to some other fund, and you're spending the money that belongs to another fund for your general fund, which is illegal.
Absolutely. I
So
agree
you've
with
got to
that.
solve that problem. Then the second problem I see is that, and that's maybe even a bigger one, is you've got to be certain whatever you do, that this does not happen again.
I'm committed to both of those concepts. And that's something we're working on a daily basis at Douglas County School District. So other things that we're going to do is prioritize utilizing restricted funds before we use unrestricted funds. We are going to regularly update budget assumptions. I would love to create a budget committee that provides input into the budgeting process before a tentative budget is ever presented to the Board of Education. We currently do not have that control process within our district, but it is something that I want to pursue. We will update all of our fiscal board policies and administrative regulations for the fiscal side of the house by June of 2026. And we'll provide training to all of our administrators and all of our department leaders within the district and to our Board of Education once those policies are approved and adopted.
Because we do not want to see you go into severe financial emergency. We do not want to see you anything different than you are right now. But understand that if you don't see improvement and you continue to have this, that's in your cards.
Absolutely. Yep. We are ready for the accountability. We are just asking for some time to rectify this situation. And like I said, we have things that we're going to implement that I believe will prevent this from happening again under my leadership.
Now, you heard me say that we're going to be meeting end of February, 1st of March in that neighborhood. We would like an update. I would like to have an exact number at that moment in time as to where your fund deficit stands at that moment. And what's changed in your estimation of revenues and expenditures between now and that moment. Is that clear?
Yeah, that's clear.
Yes, and Paul and Tom, are you?
Do you want Paul to go first? You want me to go first?
Tom, no, you go first, and then
Okay.
Paul.
All right. For the record, Tom Szynski. First, I want to start out with a positive. I think Superintendent Alvarado, the school board for Douglas County, have taken this matter very seriously. I had some earlier conversation with Superintendent Alvarado, and I know he's been communicating with his school board what the situation is. So that's a plus. Looking at your audit, it's very concerning. When you see the word going concern, that's not a good thing. When you see note 2 and you see the over expenditure in 4 different budgets, that's not a good thing. When I see $1.4 million deficit in 2 funds collectively, it makes me concerned that you've got cash flow issues. And I think Chairman Levitt spoke to that. So the urgency is even more immediate than 2 years. I think you used the term we need up to 2. We've got to solve this problem within this year because you're in violation of the law right now. One of the things that Chairman Levitt talked about is the ability to revisit your contracts with your groups. You have a significant situation here, so you probably should be having conversations, if you haven't already, with your bargaining groups to say, hey, we've got a situation here. We need to work with you on a plan to address this in the coming year because we're in a deficit position. And again, it's wonderful to get a cost of living increase. We appreciate what the legislature done, but if we didn't right size our staffing and then we gave increases in our salaries, those two are fighting against each other. So I think you're going to have to revisit that and give us an update on that when you revisit us when we meet again. So there's an urgency here, and you have to address that. And part of what we've done with other groups, we ask them to bring forward their cash flows to us so we can see that you are cash flowing and you're not utilizing funds from other funds that you're not really legally permitted to do. I think that generally captures my thoughts. But again, I appreciate the fact that you're taking this matter very seriously. You're working on it, and it's painful. We all want to see better results in our classrooms, so that's to be applauded, obviously to be applauded. But we have to do so within the fiscal constraints that the governor and the legislature provides to us. Just a couple more quick comments. I know that the hold harmless isn't available at the very close level that you are. And then this is maybe more of a Department of Education question. I'd like to maybe see, I know, and it's in law that it's 5%. I know that it changed, but anything we can do, maybe an Attorney General's opinion to take a look at that, possibly looking to the Board of Examiners, which is the governor, the Attorney General, and the Secretary of State, seeing if there's some possible wiggle room to help you out. I'm just trying to find a solution with you, because I know how challenging that is. I think, yeah, I mean, I think you're addressing all the issues. You pointed out what the problems have been. Your exploding legal costs, the right sizing of your staffing, a community that's made up of retirees that doesn't have children, loss of enrollment for probably birth rate, a whole host of different reasons. So again, appreciate what you're trying to accomplish, but there is an urgency here that has to be addressed. So that concludes my comments.
Yeah, Superintendent Alvarado, for the record, thank you for those suggestions. We will take those seriously and implement those. I also want to point out that the Board of Trustees, we've already convened 2 special meetings specifically about budget. We are scheduling 2 additional special meetings, one in January, one in February. And we're hoping to make the big decisions in early February about school consolidations, which I believe will be able to capture quite a bit of money. That's really going to be a big chunk of, I hate to call it savings, because we are reducing positions and there's people in those positions, right? But we're estimating around $1 million in cost savings for each consolidation that we implement. Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank Superintendent Alvarado for being there. Members of this committee might remember me being quite vocal about the superintendents not attending these meetings for school districts in the past and just sending out the fiscal representative. So I appreciate that. Also, just want to recognize that Superintendent Alvarado has inherited this financial situation. It wasn't something that he was co-created or responsible for. He's responsible for managing the exit from this financial crisis. So I think that he fully understands what is required. I think he understands the amount of budget cuts and the depth of that those cuts and how they will affect the school district. And he and the school district and the school community are in a real tough spot. They're looking at anywhere from 8 to 12% cut in their operations to break even, and then also to try to make progress toward a minimum fund balance of 4%. So, it's a tough spot. I think they're making the right decisions by empaneling community panels or focus groups to kind of help guide this process. And, certainly also them reaching out to, Tom and other experts to assist with this, I think have all been good signs of steps in the correct direction. I do want to point out one compelling factor that kind of compounded many of the school district's issues. A few years ago, there was a bloat in state revenue that was passed along to school districts with the caveat that school districts were intended to increase their wages through collective bargaining, despite various school districts voicing concern that it may not be sustainable. So some of this stuff is systemic that were outside their control, but most of it now is within their control. So, and that directly affected collective bargaining, which institutionalizes increases in wages. And those are hard to get back, but as Tom indicated, something that can be attempted. So I'm encouraged. I think they're headed in the right direction, and I think they will be able to manage this deficit in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the committee have any comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, I was hoping maybe the Department of Education could just speak to the hold harmless situation, just so that everybody's got clarity on that matter. So.
Yes, I figured they would be next.
Thank you very much, Douglas County School.
Yeah. Thank you.
We will see you a couple of 3 months.
February 10th, right?
February-ish.
February-ish. Okay. Thank you.
Morning.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Superintendent Megan Peterson for the Nevada Department of Education. I oversee what's seen or known as the Student Investment Division, which administers the K-12 funding known as the People-Centered Funding Plan. We have been working with the Commission on School Funding, who was formed when the People-Centered Funding Plan was introduced in 2019, to continue to evaluate and monitor the implementation of that model, and are currently evaluating, among 27 other items, enrollment trends and how to mitigate and stabilize funding within that model for the enrollment. So that does include looking at different averages of the year. Currently, we pay on quarterly points of data for enrollment, and that does have a quarter-to-quarter comparison to the prior year where the 5% threshold comes in. We did look into that. We do not unfortunately have flexibility in that threshold, but we do have the work with the commission, who has the opportunity to submit a bill draft request to revise statutes. And so we will be looking through that mechanism to revise and make recommendations on how to manage the hold harmless threshold going forward.
We have looked at the fund balances, of course, of all those school districts in the state, and we've noticed that we have declining fund balance in the number of them, which sort of indicates that they are, for whatever reason, spending more than they're taking in. They're not in a deficit position yet, other than this one, but so we see them heading towards that direction, and that's of concern to us. We're not so concerned about the services they deliver. It's more on, you're more concerned in that area, but we're definitely concerned about their finances, and they do not get into deficit positions, and we're concerned about them for the long run.
Megan Peterson for the record. Yes, this is something that we've been evaluating as well. The challenges that we're met with are balancing the revenues that are available to the state
that are appropriated by the legislature to fund education. And so navigating inflation, increasing costs and salary benefits, fuel, the buses operating, those areas are competing with not necessarily equally increasing revenues. And balancing those across the years does represent a challenge. And when that's compounded with a pupil-driven model that does not obviously represent increases or not sufficient increases in revenues, it does create challenges for managing the budgets. And that is, again, an area of the Commission on School Funding, who are continuing to evaluate and look at these areas and make recommendations on how to potentially improve and address those. But they are bound by the legislative adoption of those recommendations as well.
Tom or Paul, do you have any comments or questions for the department?
Chairman Levitt, this is Paul again. Just one anomaly that's happened in education that has made it maybe something that's contributed to the decline in fund balance, despite the fact that there's been growth in the population in the state of Nevada and economic growth. Overall student population has declined, including charter school enrollment, which is anomalous. So it's something that's kind of a new thing that I think the Department of Education is dealing with, and school districts as well, to have growing economies but have student enrollment decline. That's typically they're positively correlated. So just thought I would share that.
Okay, thank you. Tom, do you have any?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to thank the department for coming forward and helping us understand what our limitations are. I maybe echo what Paul said a little bit. I'm just concerned, in addition to Douglas, I know other districts are having to cut their budgets without mentioning their names. They know who they are. And I know you know who they are. So my only concern is just having to wait for another legislative session when these districts are having to make these cuts. If there was any kind of work we could do in the interim, either via LCB through the Board of Examiners, something to help rescue these folks. Because again, they're also being tasked with improving student accountability, student achievement, along with the student accountability for the funds that they did receive 2 sessions ago. Boy, if there's anything we could do to get somebody's ear to help them, that would be appreciated. I know it's a challenge and it's kind of out of the norm, but as Paul pointed out, we're under a new funding model that I didn't work with. I'm 8 years removed from working with the old funding model. And I know with any funding model, there needs to be tweaks and adjustments, and this one's no different. So anything you can do to get somebody's ear in the governor's office or the LCB to help these districts would be appreciated. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Thank you again for the record, Kelly Langley, Supervisor, Local Government Finance. We did mention, and they'll be attending in the next meeting, but we do have 4 local school districts that it appears that they're going to be reporting a 3rd year of declining ending fund balance. Those 3, I believe, are Douglas County, Eureka, Humboldt, and Nye. So those 4 school districts will be having to appear in front of Committee of Local Government Finance at our next meeting. And I, wanted to kind of emphasize that so that you're aware of that as well. I know you guys will be receiving the financials just like the department does. But with those 4 districts, we're going to be hearing more of the same concerns. And so thank you very much for trying to help us solve this problem. I think it takes everybody, not just, one office. And so thank you very much for working so closely with Douglas County as well.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your comments.
Chairman Levitt, this is Paul Johnson again. Hey, I just wanted to mention what a great support Megan Peterson and her team have been for the school districts in the state of Nevada. They really do an exemplary job in supporting school districts.
Thank you. Let's go on to the next item on the agenda.
We have briefing between the Committee of Local Government Finance and Local Government Finance staff. At this time, I have nothing to add to that. So I turn it to you, Chairman.
Next item then is item number 6.
Item 6, possible consideration approval of the September 18th, 2025 CLGF minutes.
We have a motion on the minutes.
For the record, Tom Szynski, move to approve.
Have a second?
Mr. Chair, this is Dina Rackley.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of approving the minutes indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh, but this is Felicia O'Carroll, and I'm abstaining because I was not at that meeting. Thank you.
Okay,
And same for me, Marty Johnson.
And Jessica Colvin.
number 7's a date I've discussed with Kelly, and obviously you've heard the day of discussion about a meeting towards the end of February, 1st of March. I think by then we get some updates from the Incline Village situation, the school district situation, and hopefully we'll by then have a much better feel for where we stand on all the audit reports for this year. And I would think to have that on the agenda for the next meeting as well.
Yes, for the record, Kelly Langley, Supervisor, Local Government Finance. We will be requesting at least 4 schools to be appearing in front of the committee in regard to third year declining ending fund balance. As I stated earlier, Chairman, you mentioned you want Douglas County School District to come back and demonstrate the progress and making necessary reductions and report information at that time where they are. Same Incline Village GID. Again, because they are on fiscal watch, having them come back to the committee and report additional information now that they've made some additional filling of some of the vacancies.
Any other comments from members of the committee about possible agenda topics?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Marty Johnson. I guess 2 thoughts. One, I wonder if we need to have our meeting a little bit earlier than the end of February. As we think about Douglas School District, they've got to cut 4.6 million to get to even by the end of the fiscal year. I mean, they've only got half a year left to do that. And, by the time the end of February rolls around, there'll be even less time to make up those cuts. But I guess the other part of that is, Kelly, I know that there are other entities out there that have had big draws on their ending fund balance, specifically general fund, during 2025, that may not be in that 3-year category, but could be big enough numbers that there are things that maybe we ought to start looking at. And so I'm wondering if maybe you could look at, especially with school districts, what the changes were in fiscal 25 that have been reported in the audits that you've got so far when we have the meeting.
That makes sense.
The department will be prepared to provide that information to you. We have looked at it, and you're right. Statutorily, though, it's reporting to the committee those school districts that have the third year decline in ending fund balance, which now that, the funding has changed for the school districts, we've mentioned other regulations that maybe need to be reconsidered or revisited. That's something that, waiting 3 years, I can tell you, as Douglas County reported earlier today, they had 10 million as an ending fund balance back in 22-23 as an actual. And so they've gone from that to 4.1 the following year down to a negative. And so maybe waiting 3 years, ending fund balance, maybe that needs to be revisited at the same time. And Marty, I think that would be, good to point out. we'll have that information available at the next meeting.
Yeah, Marty Johnson again. And Kelly, you're exactly right. I mean, this 3-year thing, in my opinion, doesn't make any sense. Some school district or local government, I mean, whoever it is, could have a $10 million ending fund balance and then go to 9.9, 9.8, 9.7. Technically, 3 years declining balance, they have to come and report to us. Someone that has a $10 million fund balance and draws $7 million of it in 1 year, theoretically, we don't hear about it for another 2 years. I think that's gotta be addressed somehow.
I agree. Any other comments, members of the committee? Any other topics we should be discussing? Okay. Anything you've got, Kelly? Next item on the agenda, public comment.
Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per person, and comments based on viewpoint will not be restricted. At the discretion of the chairperson, additional public comment may be heard when that item is reached. The chairperson may allow additional time to be given to a speaker as time allows at his sole discretion. NRS 241-020, NRS 241-030. Would anyone in Reno like to make public comment at this time? If you're attending via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're on the telephone, please press *9. I do not see anyone who would like to make public comment at this time.
Next item on the agenda, we are adjourned.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy
Thank you.
holidays.